Broke single dad saves girl from ice. She's actually a secret. Welcome, dear viewers, to a tale brimming with hope, resilience, and life-altering secrets. In this thrilling story, you will meet a broke single father struggling against the harsh realities of winter until one fateful day changes everything. When he rescues a young woman from a perilous sheet of ice, he believes he's simply doing the right thing. Little does he know, the woman he saves is not at all who she appears to be. Prepare yourselves for a journey filled with unanticipated twists, deep betrayals, and ultimate karmic retribution that will leave you guessing at every turn. Settle in, keep your hearts open, and let us embark on this extraordinary odyssey together. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Jonas Stone was not the sort of man who asked for sympathy. Life had dealt him enough blows that he had learned to stand on his own, even if his stance was wobbly. He lived in a battered trailer at the edge of the small town of Silver Pine, located just a few miles from the rugged beauty of the White Mountain National Forest. The entire place was blanketed in snow, glistening like shards of crystalline glass under the weak winter sun. Jonas's battered second-hand Toyota Camry coughed and sputtered in the cold, but it never failed him completely. It reflected his own spirit, injured, but somehow still pressing onward. Jonas had a daughter, Lily, a bright-eyed 12-year-old who looked at the world with optimism he believed he'd lost. Ever since his wife left, taking with her the last remnants of Jonas's savings, he'd been scraping to make ends meet by working odd jobs. One day he was repairing a local shop's creaking floorboards. Another day he found himself on a logging site hauling heavy trunks. Each time Lily asked if there was enough money for dinner, Jonas would smile, pat her head, and whisper confidently that everything would be fine, even if he feared otherwise. Winter in Silver Pine was brutal. The roads glistened with black ice, and the wind bit at exposed skin like tiny daggers. But Jonas was no stranger to adversity. Each morning, he trudged through the snow in his worn boots to drop Lily at a nearby bus stop. Then he would head to whichever temporary job he managed to land that week. On this particular day, the frosty air was especially sharp. While driving Lily to the bus stop, Jonas noticed the reflection of something or someone on the frozen lake that ran alongside the main road. Lily peered out the car window. "Dad, is that a person on the lake?" she asked, anxiety evident in her voice. Jonas squinted through the frost-laced windshield. Sure enough, it looked like a figure standing or perhaps struggling on the ice. Jonas's stomach twisted. Only a day earlier, local news had warned of thinning ice patches near the lake's center. Yet there stood a lone individual, precariously balanced. He inhaled sharply. Danger was etched in that scene, and he knew that if they fell in, the freezing water could be fatal within minutes. He pulled the Camry over, telling Lily to stay put. Without hesitation, Jonas sprinted toward the icy shore. Jonas's breath formed clouds of vapor as he yelled to the figure, "Don't move! The ice is too thin." But the young woman, probably in her early 20s, seemed terrified, unable to speak. Her skin was pale, and her eyes reflected sheer panic. Just as Jonas took another step forward, the ice groaned and cracked. The sound was like a cannon shot in the still air. Time seemed to stretch thin as Jonas watched in horror. The surface gave way beneath the woman's feet, plunging her into the freezing abyss. Adrenaline surged through Jonas. He had never been the kind to watch idly while someone drowned. The edges of the ice were slick, threatening to break further. Nonetheless, Jonas crawled forward, distributing his weight as best he could. He clawed at the surface, inching closer until he could see the girl's dark hair bobbing among shards of broken ice. Cold seeped through his threadbare coat, but his resolve held firm. He reached out, plunging his arm into the numbing water and hooking his fingers onto the girl's jacket collar. With desperate strength, Jonas hauled the woman's trembling body onto firmer ice. It groaned ominously, but miraculously it held. Now safely on shore, Jonas lay the stranger on a patch of snow. She was barely conscious, her lips turning blue, and her teeth chattered violently. Lily, who had cautiously approached, rushed over with a wool blanket she'd found in the trunk. Jonas used it to wrap around the woman, trying to warm her up. Her face was breathtakingly beautiful, though contorted in shock and confusion. It was clear she needed medical attention. "Dad, let's get her to the car," Lily said, her voice trembling. Jonas nodded. His own limbs felt like lead, but he refused to slow down. With Lily's help, he half carried, half led the woman to the Toyota. The heater, though not very powerful, was better than nothing. Jonas immediately called for an ambulance. The operator sounded concerned and urged him to get her to Silver Pine County Hospital if he could manage the roads. Jonas glanced at Lily. They both understood there was no time to wait for help to come to them. The woman was slipping away, her breath ragged. Jonas gently settled her into the back seat, telling Lily to watch over her. Then he spun the wheel, heart pounding, and raced toward the hospital. The local hospital had seen its share of winter accidents, but nothing quite like what Jonas carried through its sliding doors. Staff members immediately took the woman to a small emergency treatment room, scolding Jonas for endangering himself by retrieving her from the ice. Yet behind their stern words, he sensed gratitude in their eyes. He waited outside the curtain, shivering in his wet clothes and praying she would be all right. Moments later, a doctor emerged, pulling aside the curtain. "She's incredibly lucky you found her," he said gravely. "We've stabilized her, but she needs time to recover from hypothermia." "Do you know who she is?" Jonas shook his head. The girl had no ID on her, just a small silver locket around her neck. She had not yet spoken a word in Jonas's presence, barely retaining consciousness when they'd arrived. Jonas glanced at Lily, who was standing on tiptoe, trying to catch a glimpse. A strange pang tugged at his heart. He knew what it was like to be alone and vulnerable. Drawing in a deep breath, Jonas told the staff he would pay for any immediate costs. He had no idea how, but he couldn't leave her without some guarantee of care. While the hospital staff arranged the necessary paperwork, Jonas noticed something peculiar about the girl's locket. It bore a tiny emblem he couldn't quite identify, and when the doctor momentarily placed it on a nearby tray, Jonas observed an intricate engraving, CH. The letters shimmered faintly under the fluorescent lights. He didn't recognize any famous local families with initials that matched. Still, he wondered if it was a clue. With the woman safely in the hospital's care, Jonas faced an immediate concern. How was he going to cover these medical costs? He barely had enough saved for next month's rent, and that itself was uncertain because odd jobs were growing scarce in the harsh winter. The hospital receptionist, a sympathetic older woman, tried to reassure him, noting that if no one claimed the patient, local charities like the American Red Cross occasionally provided assistance in dire cases. As if on cue, Lily tugged at Jonas's sleeve. "Dad, we can't just leave her," she whispered, eyes gleaming with concern. The unwavering compassion in Lily's gaze made Jonas's chest tighten with pride and worry. But he also sensed something strange lingering in the air, an impression that their involvement with this mysterious girl would lead them down an unpredictable path. Paragraph 7, approximately 200 words. When Lily returned to school, Jonas stayed behind at the hospital. Despite having promised to do some carpentry work for a local diner owner, he couldn't bring himself to leave. Something about the girl's pale face, so vulnerable, haunted him. Hours passed. Nurse after nurse went in and out, checking her vitals. The silence in the hallway seemed to intensify the loud pounding of Jonas's heart. Finally, in the late afternoon, she awakened. Softly, Jonas approached the bed. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment fear flickered across her face, as though she expected something terrible. Then, seeing his concerned expression, she relaxed. "Thank you," she whispered, voice hoarse. "I'm Charlotte." Jonas introduced himself, feeling a wave of relief. "You fell through the ice. Are you? Do you have any family nearby we can contact? She winced, shutting her eyes as if the question caused her physical pain. No, she replied after a moment. Not close by. She seemed hesitant to divulge more. Jonas didn't push. Something told him she was afraid, not just physically but emotionally. Fear radiated off her in waves. And Jonas knew that whatever she was running from or hiding would soon catch up to her. Over the next few days, Charlotte recovered slowly but steadily. Though Jonas had only planned to visit once, he found himself drawn back daily. He brought Lily along in the afternoons. The chatter of Lily's adolescent excitement sometimes coaxed a soft smile from Charlotte, which was more than Jonas had ever expected. Still, she remained guarded about her past, offering only fragments of personal information. One evening, as the sky darkened and a soft snow began to fall outside the hospital windows, Charlotte confided in Jonas that she had no place to stay. She spoke of lost keys and a suitcase that had fallen into the lake. Jonas could sense half-truths in her explanations, but he felt an inexplicable urge to protect her. So, he did the only thing his conscience would permit. He offered her his trailer's couch until she could arrange something more permanent. Charlotte hesitated. Tears rimmed her eyes. "I can't ask you to do that," she whispered, voice trembling. Jonas replied with quiet conviction, "I don't have much, but no one should be alone out there in this cold." And so the stage was set for a perilous convergence of truths and lies, of hidden identities and life-changing choices. Charlotte's first night at the trailer was awkward but warm in its own way. Lily gave Charlotte her favorite pillow and insisted she keep it. Jonas insisted on cooking dinner simple meatloaf with whatever spices he had left in the cabinet. Charlotte ate slowly, as if each bite reminded her of something lost. She gazed around the cramped living room with an odd sense of wonder, admiring pictures of Lily's school projects taped to the walls and the mismatch of thrift store furniture. As they settled in, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows in a reminder of the fierce weather. Lily fell asleep on a worn armchair, lulled by the crackling of the small space heater. Jonas busied himself by washing dishes. Charlotte quietly approached, her fingers curling around the edges of the table as she watched him. "Thank you," she said softly. "You and your daughter have been kinder to me than I deserve." Jonas wiped his hands on a towel, meeting her gaze. "You deserve kindness," he replied. Something in her eyes flickered with unspoken sadness. She murmured a quiet goodnight and retreated to the couch. Jonas couldn't help but wonder about the secrets she buried beneath that fragile exterior. Days turned into a week, and Charlotte still hadn't left. In that time, she contributed in small ways, tidying up, cooking when Jonas worked, and helping Lily with homework. Slowly, Jonas noticed changes. The bruises under Charlotte's eyes faded, replaced by the subtle flush of restored health. She laughed more frequently, though never about her past. She clearly had no trouble reading complex documents or understanding Lily's advanced math problems, which seemed surprising for someone who claimed limited schooling. When Jonas teased her about it, she'd just smile enigmatically, leaving him with more questions. One afternoon, a call came in from the hospital billing department. Jonas's heart sank as the figure was recited. Thousands of dollars, far beyond his means. He swallowed hard, explaining he'd do what he could. Charlotte overheard and looked stricken. As soon as he hung up, she stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Jonas, let me handle it," she said, eyes blazing with determination. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "Handle it how?" "You said you don't have any money." She bit her lip, appearing momentarily cornered. Then she responded quietly, "I have a trust fund. It's complicated, but I can access part of it. Please, let me pay the hospital bill." Jonas didn't know what to think. The notion that Charlotte might have a trust fund clashed violently with everything she'd told him about having nowhere to go. But her plea was earnest, almost desperate. She insisted on going to the hospital's billing office in person. With Lily in tow, Jonas drove Charlotte to the building. The clerk at the window recognized her immediately, which only deepened Jonas's suspicion. The woman stammered politely, "I'll just need some documentation, Miss Hartford." "Hartford?" Jonas echoed, confusion thick in his voice. Charlotte sighed, turning to face him fully. "My full name is Charlotte Hartford," she admitted, though her eyes gleamed with conflicting emotions. The clerk's face lit up with sudden realization, and the woman bustled off to fetch the administrator. Meanwhile, Jonas stared at Charlotte, trying to recall why that name sounded vaguely familiar. Lily clung to his arm, equally puzzled. Moments later, the hospital administrator arrived, beaming from ear to ear. "Miss Hartford, it's an honor. I had no idea you were in our humble town. Let's get your paperwork processed immediately." Jonas felt as though he'd just been shoved onto a stage mid-play, with no script and no clue what role he was meant to play. The full weight of Charlotte's confession took shape that evening around the kitchen table. She explained that the Hartford name originated from a family empire based in finance. The Hartford Group, known internationally, had offices scattered across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Jonas realized he'd once read a magazine piece about a philanthropic billionaire named Theodore Hartford, Charlotte's grandfather. As the words tumbled out, Charlotte's voice cracked with guilt. She had run away from home. She felt stifled by the expectations placed on her as the Hartford heiress. She'd come to Silver Pine seeking anonymity and genuine human connection. Yet her attempt at solitude led her onto the treacherous lake, where Jonas's timely intervention saved her life. Jonas sat quietly for a long moment after Charlotte's confession, absorbing the gravity of what she'd hidden. Lily, on the other hand, bombarded Charlotte with curious but warm questions. Did she live in a mansion? Did she own a pony? Charlotte's answers were subdued, marked by frustration over her lack of personal freedom. Through it all, Jonas found himself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He had rescued a secret billionaire. It was surreal. More than that, it made him question whether he truly knew this gentle soul he had welcomed into his home. Within days, word leaked out around Silver Pine that the quiet young woman staying with Jonas was, in fact, an heiress. People began to take interest in Jonas and Lily like never before. Neighbors who had once been dismissive suddenly brought over casseroles. The local diner Jonas worked at occasionally offered him meals free of charge. But behind the shiny veneer of generosity, Jonas sensed envy and opportunism. Some folks fawned over Charlotte, asking for favors or peppering her with questions about her fortune. Jonas grew uncomfortable, protective even. He had never wanted fame or fortune. All he had ever wanted was to keep Lily safe and give her a decent life. Meanwhile, Charlotte wrestled with phone calls from her family's lawyers and board members of the Hartford Group. They demanded she return home and assume her responsibilities. She refused, standing resolute against the pressure. She insisted that for the first time she felt free with Jonas and Lily. Yet not everyone respected her decision. Strange men in tailored suits began showing up around Silver Pine, making discreet inquiries about Charlotte's whereabouts. Jonas grew uneasy, suspecting they might not be above using intimidation to force her back into a life she desperately wished to escape. One cold morning, Lily burst into the trailer, breathless. She had seen two men in black suits leaning against a shiny car across the street, their eyes fixed on the trailer's front door. Alarmed, Jonas peeked through the curtains. Sure enough, a sleek silver sedan idled there, an expensive model rarely seen in Silver Pine. Fear spiked in Charlotte's gaze. She clutched her locket, the one inscribed with CH. It no longer felt like a sweet keepsake, but a brand that tied her to a world she'd been trying to escape. Determined to protect Charlotte, Jonas hatched a plan. He called in a favor from an old friend who managed a remote cabin near the outskirts of White Mountain National Forest. That evening, under cover of darkness, Jonas drove Charlotte and Lily there in the faithful Toyota Camry. The men in suits tailed them for miles but lost track when Jonas took a narrow logging road. The cabin sat near a frozen creek, mostly hidden by towering pines. There was no electricity, just a wood-burning stove for heat. The seclusion brought relief, albeit tinged with an unsettling sense of being hunted. Yet, life had taught Jonas that refuge can be fleeting. Fate took a sharp turn when, under the pale moonlight, Charlotte felt compelled to disclose another layer of her truth. By the dim glow of an oil lamp, she revealed that her father, Malcolm Hartford, had arranged an impending merger that hinged on her public presence as the Hartford heiress. The terms were murky, but from what Charlotte gathered, the entire operation was less than ethical. She believed that certain overseas partners were laundering money through legitimate Hartford businesses. Her father insisted she keep silent or risk irreparable damage to the family's empire. Jonas listened incredulous. He was a simple man, never imagining a world rife with corporate betrayal and clandestine deals. He realized Charlotte had become more than just a house guest. She was part of his family now. If these men in suits wanted to force her back, they would have to get through him first. Lily, sensing the gravity, held Charlotte's hand and whispered encouragement. A creeping dread shadowed the small cabin. Every rustle of the wind in the trees sounded like an intruder's footstep. Jonas's protective instincts flared. He decided it was time to expose this corruption, not just run from it. What he couldn't predict was how violently those powers would retaliate. The next morning, Jonas drove Charlotte to the local sheriff's office to share what she knew, but they arrived to find the building suspiciously empty. The deputy on duty looked harried and mumbled excuses about the sheriff being away on business. Sensing a cover-up, Charlotte and Jonas left quickly. No sooner had they stepped onto the sidewalk than two men in suits confronted them. Their voices were low, threatening. They demanded Charlotte relinquish whatever documents or evidence she possessed regarding the Hartford Group's shady operations. Panic heated Jonas's blood. The men grabbed Charlotte's arm with bruising force. That's when Jonas, fueled by paternal fury, lunged forward, grappling with the nearest man. The scuffle drew attention from passers-by. Ultimately, the men fled, leaving Jonas with a scraped shoulder and a black eye. But they'd made their point clear. Charlotte's revelations threatened powerful interests. If she continued to resist, they wouldn't hesitate to use violence. Despite the danger, Charlotte refused to cave. She had come to care deeply for Jonas and Lily, and she couldn't bear the thought of them living in constant peril. Jonas, in turn, refused to back down, remembering how she might have died in that icy lake had he not intervened. Their bond was forged through adversity and sealed by loyalty. By the time they reached the trailer again, Lily was waiting anxiously. She gasped at the bruise forming under her father's eye. Charlotte hugged Lily close, tears in her eyes. Guilt weighed heavily on her. "I brought this trouble here," she said, her voice trembling. Jonas shook his head, hand resting gently on her shoulder. "People like them thrive on fear," he said quietly. "I won't let them tear us apart." Determined to bring the truth to light, Charlotte decided to contact her grandfather's old confidant, a philanthropic lawyer known for exposing injustice. He was based in Boston and had a reputation for integrity. As soon as Charlotte got him on the phone, relief coursed through her. He agreed to meet them and insisted that they bring all evidence they could gather. With shaking hands, Charlotte accessed her hidden digital files documents detailing the unauthorized transfers and money laundering attempts. Jonas didn't understand the complexities, but he grasped the significance. However, just as Charlotte was about to email them, the power suddenly died. The lights flickered off, the heater stuttered, and Lily shrieked in surprise. The trailer plunged into cold darkness. Outside, Jonas thought he heard the faint roar of an engine pulling away. Sabotage was no longer a distant possibility, it was happening now. Undeterred, Jonas lit candles while Charlotte used Lily's small battery-powered lamp to continue her urgent email. The next hurdle was the internet. Their home Wi-Fi was down. Jonas suspected the lines had been cut. Resourceful and fueled by desperation, Charlotte tethered her phone's data connection. It was painfully slow out here in the snowy hinterland, But it was her only chance. She attached the incriminating documents, typed a succinct but incendiary note to the lawyer, and hit send. Minutes passed, then an hour. The upload crawled. Lily dozed off, cradled in a threadbare blanket. Jonas paced in the cramped space, peering out the window for signs of another stealth intrusion. Charlotte's phone battery dipped precariously. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the email sent. Charlotte exhaled, tears of relief sliding down her cheeks. Everything was in motion now. There was no turning back. As if responding to her resolution, a new storm front rolled over Silver Pine, unleashing a vicious wind that rattled the roof. Yet within the battered walls of the trailer, Jonas, Lily, and Charlotte felt a sense of unwavering unity. No matter what came next, they were in this together. And that, in the end, would be their greatest strength. The lawyer moved swiftly. By the next morning, multiple federal agencies were involved, investigating the Hartford Group's suspicious financial dealings. Charlotte's father, Malcolm, found himself cornered. As news filtered back, Charlotte braced herself for backlash. She had loved her father once, but this conspiracy was too malignant to ignore. Jonas, meanwhile, stood beside her, unwavering. Silver Pine buzzed with the shocking revelation. Townspeople who had initially welcomed Charlotte with shallow warmth now realized how severe her situation was. Apologies poured in, but Jonas and Lily kept their distance. Soon, an unexpected event shook the town further. A black SUV swerved on the icy road near Jonas's trailer one evening and slammed into a telephone pole. The occupant was none other than Malcolm Hartford himself, come to drag Charlotte back by force. Instead, he found himself trapped in his own predicament, injured, desperate, and ironically at the mercy of Jonas, who rushed out to help. Jonas pried open the driver's door, ignoring the fury in Malcolm's eyes. Seeing that the older man was pinned and bleeding, Jonas reached for his phone to call an ambulance. Malcolm tried to protest, but Jonas insisted, recollecting that no matter how vile a person's intentions, life remained precious. At the hospital, Malcolm Hartford seethed with resentment. He demanded Charlotte see him alone, but she refused. Jonas accompanied her, standing like a sentinel by the door. Malcolm's voice was strained, partially from pain and partially from an egotistical rage that had fermented over time. "You destroyed everything," he hissed, pointing an accusing finger at Charlotte. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The federal agents are freezing our accounts. The entire Hartford Group is under scrutiny." His face twisted in disbelief as he glanced at Jonas with contempt. "All because of some broke. Nobody who pulled you out of a lake." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "No, father," she replied, voice quivering but resolute. "Because we were laundering money, because we supported criminal networks. Jonas is the only reason I'm alive. He's the reason I had the courage to do what's right." Malcolm's scowl deepened. He tried to sit up but winced in pain. In that moment, Jonas saw not a mighty corporate giant but a broken man, undone by his own greed. The hospital staff came to adjust the bed, and Jonas gently guided Charlotte out of the room, leaving Malcolm to contemplate the ruin he had brought upon himself. With the truth laid bare, authorities swiftly took action. Arrests were made, bank accounts associated with illegal transfers were frozen, and high-ranking members of the Hartford Group faced charges. Charlotte gave a statement detailing her knowledge. Though it meant testifying against her own father, she did so with unwavering resolve. The subsequent headline splashed across national news: "Harris exposes billion-dollar fraud." In Silver Pine, the narrative became local legend, how a broke single dad saved a mysterious woman, only to uncover corruption at the highest levels. As for Jonas, he soon found that Charlotte's rescue had ripple effects that transformed his life. Out of gratitude, Charlotte discreetly arranged for Lily's future education costs to be covered. A letter arrived one evening, stamped with the emblem of Harvard University, guaranteeing Lily a scholarship once she completed high school, should she meet the academic requirements. It was an astonishing gift that Jonas never asked for but humbly accepted. And in a twist of karmic justice, those who once belittled Jonas for his financial struggles now saw him in a different light. He didn't flaunt Charlotte's wealth or newfound connections. Instead, Jonas remained the same hard-working father whose humility made him a giant among men. Weeks passed, winter slowly yielded to an early spring, and the snow around Silver Pine began melting in patches. The once frozen lake where Charlotte nearly lost her life returned to its gentle lapping waves. Jonas and Charlotte stood on the shore one afternoon, observing the thaw. She wore a simple jacket, the bruises of her ordeal fading into memory. When Jonas asked how she felt, Charlotte only smiled softly, free. Malcolm, still convalescing from the crash, faced multiple charges. Charlotte's grandfather, Theodore Hartford, whose philanthropic work had once shielded the family name, expressed both sorrow and pride in his granddaughter's moral fortitude. He reached out to Charlotte, hoping to rebuild the family on a foundation of honesty. For the first time in her life, Charlotte believed it might be possible. As for Jonas, a small miracle occurred in the form of a local business loan he never even applied for, approved by a philanthropic foundation associated with the Hartford family. It was enough for him to start his own handyman and carpentry service. Though initially hesitant to accept help, Jonas realized that kindness, when given freely and without expectation, was a gift worth embracing. A gift that, for once, had come full circle. By the end of spring, the new blossoms of Silver Pine seemed to mirror the blossoming hope in Jonas's life. His carpentry service gained traction, word of his integrity spread. Local families trusted him implicitly. The once ramshackle trailer now saw a few essential improvements: a sturdier roof, new windows that kept out the biting wind, and a fresh coat of paint Lily chose herself. Charlotte assisted here and there, offering her business acumen when Jonas needed to navigate paperwork. Though Charlotte considered traveling after the dust settled to find her own path, without the suffocating shadow of the Hartford name, she lingered longer than planned. The closeness she shared with Lily grew. They baked pastries together, giggling when they burned the edges. Jonas found himself smiling more often. A sense of family, genuine and unscripted, enveloped them. And then, on a bright day near the summer's brink, Jonas woke to find an official letter taped to his front door. It was from a corporate legal office, informing him that by the philanthropic directive of Theodore Hartford, Jonas had been awarded a significant trust for saving Charlotte's life. With it came a handwritten note: "Thank you for reminding us what humanity truly looks like. Th." Jonas stared at the note and the legal documents in disbelief. The trust amounted to a life-changing sum, enough to ensure Lily's future and secure them a comfortable home. He read the note repeatedly, tears staining the corners of the page. All those years of scraping by, of feeling lesser than, had been wiped away with a single generous gesture. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the recognition that goodness, even in the face of hardship, still mattered in the world. He looked around the small kitchen that had housed so many memories: Lily's laughter, Charlotte's gratitude, his own late-night worries. He recalled how precariously the ice had broken beneath Charlotte that fateful day, how close she came to vanishing beneath the lake's dark surface. If he had hesitated even a second, she might have drowned. Now, their destinies were entwined in a tapestry of gratitude and moral reckoning. Karmic retribution had landed upon the corrupt. They faced legal battles and public disgrace. Meanwhile, Jonas's unwavering kindness had ushered in a new era of opportunity. There was a resonance to it all, as though the universe had tilted momentarily in favor of those with honest hearts. In the weeks that followed, Jonas decided how best to use the trust. He refused to abandon the trailer entirely. Too many memories were rooted in its modest walls, but he did purchase a small house in town. Lily picked out her new bedroom's paint color, a pastel lavender. Charlotte took a short trip back to her grandfather's estate. where they began reorganizing the Hartford group to align with more ethical standards. There was talk of Charlotte returning permanently to help lead philanthropic initiatives, but she had yet to decide. Part of her heart remained in Silver Pine. When Charlotte did come back, she found a home brimming with warmth and a family that genuinely cared for her well-being. Lily greeted her at the front door with a handcrafted "Welcome Back" banner. Jonas stood nearby, his gentle smile reflecting a subtle longing. The world outside might still see Charlotte as a billionaire heiress, a heroic whistleblower, but within these walls she was a cherished friend, perhaps more. On a late summer night after Lily was asleep, Jonas and Charlotte sat on the porch listening to crickets under a blanket of stars. The conversation meandered from future plans to unexpected blessings. In the hush of that moment, they realized their bond transcended circumstance, wealth, or fear. Summer's warmth was in full bloom when the final karmic curtain fell. News broke that Malcolm Hartford, along with a select group of co-conspirators, had pled guilty to fraud. For Charlotte, it was a bittersweet moment. She had once idolized her father, despite his flaws. Now, seeing him publicly acknowledge his crimes offered a strange mixture of closure and sorrow, but she took solace in the fact that justice had been served. The Hartford group would be reborn without the rot at its core. Meanwhile, Jonas's new carpentry business thrived, with numerous locals seeking his honest craftsmanship. Lily excelled at school, spurred on by the promise of an eventual scholarship. As for Charlotte, she found a measure of peace in forging a balanced path, splitting her time between philanthropic work for her family's restructured empire and the comforting haven that was Jonas's household. In the end, everything seemed to come full circle. A broke single dad's act of selflessness sparked a chain of events that toppled corruption, brought karmic justice, and led to a second chance at happiness for everyone involved. There was no longer fear overshadowing Charlotte's eyes, only the steady glow of hope, gratitude, and the quiet promise of new beginnings. Thank you, dear viewers, for joining us on this unforgettable journey of redemption and discovery. We witnessed how one daring act of kindness transformed not only a perilous moment on thin ice, but also the futures of those involved. In this story, our hero's selfless courage sparked a chain reaction leading to exposure of wrongdoing, rekindled hope, and deep bonds that transcended wealth or status. If you found yourself inspired by Jonas's perseverance, Charlotte's moral fortitude, or Lily's unwavering devotion, don't forget to show your support. Like this video, share it far and wide, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Until next time, remember that true courage can melt even the iciest of challenges.